Hey, how's it going? This is the Portrait Balls podcast with Tola and Filippo. Use that.
You are more traditional.
I'm more like caveman. Uh-oh.
Hi.
Hello.
Hey.
How are you guys?
We're doing audio.
You're checking audio.
But it's good to see you.
But
bro.
it's great. Yeah, it's fun. It's great to see you.
So I hang up my face then?
No, it's fine. It's fine because what I tend to do is I pull the audio out anyway.
Okay.
And I then edit. But whatever makes you comfortable. If you don't mind us staring at you for the next.
Yeah, for the audience, it's amazing, you know.
So, Filippo, this is Joel, Filippo.
Hi, Filippo. Nice to meet you.
Hi, Joel. Pleasure is mine.
And you're in the Alps right now, right?
Yeah, and sunburned also. My face, I'm losing my skin. Yeah. I'm still not able to manage to get the tan properly after 31 years. So, no hopes.
Great.
So, Joel, how you doing?
I'm okay, thank you. Yeah.
Yeah. As I said yesterday, we haven't seen each other since probably December or January.
Mm-hmm.
And obviously, with the way things have gone, no one has seen anyone for the last few months.
Exactly.
How have you been? How have you been holding up?
Yeah, it's been a weird time, but it's been really good. I mean, the good thing is people have been open to trying new things and to getting creative. So that's been an opportunity in the way we do our services, in the way I do my job, you know, and also like people all over the world have felt a lot more connected in terms of our experiences. So it's almost been easier to phone up a friend in Los Angeles or Oslo and check in because we kind of know the background of each other's lives a bit more.
Wow, excellent.
Yeah,
excellent.
Absolutely.
So you said you've been able to work. How's your work been? How have you been able to kind of coordinate things from home, basically?
Yeah, well, I mean, I normally work from home anyway, but obviously I used to do a lot of home visits to people. Filippo, I'm a priest in the Church of England. I don't know if Tola.
Yeah, he mentioned. Yeah.
So normally I do visits to people in hospital or in their home, especially if they're ill or if they've just lost a loved one. And a lot of those conversations have to move online now or just on a phone call, which is not the same. But I can still do them. The two things that didn't change immediately were funerals. I could still do funerals at the cemetery or the crematorium. And I was still going into school to do the act of worship in school. Just recently, that's changed, and I now send them a little video of me talking to the kids, which is probably quite scary for them. But instead now,
this guy with the full facial beard, just going, believe in God, sort of thing.
Not the real Santa Claus.
Exactly. So like you said, you've been doing a lot of, I suppose, speaking to people in the hospital, a lot of funerals. What has that experience been like during COVID? Because obviously there's a lot of things that have to go that comes along with that. Probably less intimacy. You probably have to, come up with new innovative ways to show compassion, if that's the right word, to almost comfort. You know what I mean?
Absolutely. I mean, a lot of
or support also. Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah.
A lot of the work is almost just being physically present. So if you sit with someone in silence, it shows that you are with them in solidarity.
Mm.
And if you can't sit with them in real time and real place, it makes it much more difficult. Also, in terms of like putting a hand on someone's shoulder, giving them a hug, all of that physical stuff, and also the way that you can read in a person's face what's going on for them. That's not the same right now. And also, like, I think the big thing about the coronavirus pandemic has been it reveals how different people's experiences, how different people's lives are. One person is surrounded by family and loved ones. Another person is completely isolated. One person is anxious because of their own health, if they have like an underlying health condition. Another person is feeling confident and even impatient to go back out into the world. So we find ourselves, in some ways, even more so than in ordinary times, separated by our experiences. And my job is to try and help people bridge those and to think about the experiences of others, So keeping people in touch. One of the first things that happened was people in the neighborhood began asking me if I could put them in touch with someone who needed a phone call, needed some shopping, needed some practical assistance. So you kind of become, you have to reimagine how your community works.
Absolutely. Yeah.
But do you think that this period made us better persons, like many people say, except from the US people, because that they are fighting, they are more concentrated to fight,
Yeah, that's a good question. Has it made us better people? It's made us more thoughtful, maybe, or more aware.
I like that. More aware, yeah.
I think that's real because we've slowed down. Now, whether we make the right choices or not, that's a different question. I'm not sure that we do.
Absolutely, because because I went to the store. Yeah, I went to the store today, and like you rightly said, everyone's aware, but I could see a lot of people were not doing the right thing. It's almost like some people were like, you know what, I'm not going to wear my mask. Something as simple as that.
Right.
And some people were like, I'm going to wear my mask.
Seen that.
Yeah. Exactly. So it's like there's a heightened awareness, but you can tell that some people have taken one path, some people have taken another. I guess I had another question, which was, I mean, for you personally, how have you been able to navigate the coronavirus time? Because obviously you do a lot of work helping other people, but you yourself, how have you been? Like, have you been reading? Have you been,
So physically, I'm not in a risk category. And although I have made a few home visits and seen people who were vulnerable, I've done so with the appropriate face mask or social distancing or whatever. So I've not felt that I was personally, physically at risk. The thing that I have noticed has been in terms of my mental well-being. I think the first few months were okay. It felt like a little bit like a holiday or an adventure. But as it's dragged on and on, the uncertainty and the lack of normality, I think, begins to take its toll. And I have felt a little bit depressed is a strong word, but down a little bit. And also because of isolation, the cumulative effect of that over months and months, I think it makes everyone go a little bit crazy.
That's putting it mildly, actually. Filippo, do you want to jump in there?
No, I mean, the isolation period drives you crazy just because, you have to deal with many things that you haven't thought before.
Yeah.
And absolutely, it's very strange. You can concentrate even more in your self vision of the things, which is not always the best, because we are living in a society. So yeah, it's been.
It's been fascinating.
Some people are real self-starters or self-motivators.
Sure.
And some people really thrive in their own company, introverts, But other people, this has been a real struggle. I mean, to be an extrovert in isolation, or to be someone who needs other people to get them motivated.
Absolutely.
This has got to have been a real ordeal.
But it's funny you said that, because I was speaking to my aunt the other day, and because we're both introverts in some respect, but we said that even introverts are struggling. You know what I mean? Yes. Because there's one thing to be introverted, but another to have introversion forced upon you.
That's right.
Then you're like, then you have a choice. You're like, okay, what do I do now? So it's been one of those. It's been unprecedented.
Yeah.
But I think one of the major things that I think that we're yet to tackle is the trauma that a lot of people are going to go through, or are currently going through, past the pandemic. Because I think right now, a lot of people are still in isolation. We still don't know what's really going on, but we know that a lot of people have lost loved ones. That's just an unfortunate fact, which is why I wanted to speak to you, because I think I've spoken to you in the past on a number of occasions, and I think I get a sense that you probably, like you rightly said, you've had to kind of reimagine what your role is as a priest, right? So, not to make you sound like a psychologist, but it's like, how do people navigate grief? Like, what are the first steps?
That's a really interesting question. But if I can just rewind a second, about trauma, we actually, some of the clergy locally, we had a online training recently about trauma-aware ministry, or how we can help people in a time of trauma. And we saw a graph which sort of shows stages of trauma, where initially you kind of survive, and staying alive day to day becomes your main focus. Then there can be like a heroic phase where people want to do big things to support others, to make a difference, and that can be motivating. And then after that, there can come a time of disillusionment. And really, when you've stopped thinking about your survival and stopped having a big purpose, that's like the long, lonely wilderness road. And that's where you really start to see the consequences of the trauma playing out. Now, I'm not an expert, but that does chime with some of the experiences that I've seen personally in myself and in other people. And that kind of maps onto grief. There's the famous stages of grief, where you have denial, bargaining, anger, acceptance, and one other which momentarily escapes me. But again, that's not a one-size-fits-all model. So everyone is going to experience that differently. And even subsequent events, even years from now, might jog someone's memory, and then they re-experience that loss, or they re-experience that trauma.
Yeah.
And I think the difficulty with grieving is because it's so intensely personal, and because it's so powerful. If you're grieving in the company of other people who are also grieving, and their grieving looks different from your grieving, that can actually become like a source of tension.
Yes.
In your relationship. And so you'll find families like almost turning on each other, turning against each other. Like, you're not doing it properly, you're not respecting the grief, the loss that we've experienced. And even, petty things about property, money, what hymns we're going to have at the funeral, all that kind of stuff can become like a battlefield on which people are playing out what really is an emotional drama. But it's because their intense personal experience is coming into conflict with other people's way of grieving or way of coping.
Well, of coping. Yeah.
Does that make sense?
What's the? Yeah, absolutely. I think for me, Filippo, Joel was I guess my mom's mentor for the last 5 years, maybe. Was it 5 years?
That's a lot.
4 or 5 years. That's right.
4 or 5 years. Yeah. So, when my mom joined the ministry, I was still trying to figure out my faith and that kind of stuff. And I was trying to figure out the importance of religion, so to speak, in quote, or this is spiritual life. And as I watched my mom and Joel, do that thing in church, and my mom go to these hospitals dealing with people about to pass away, holding funerals,
that's very strong.
In church. That's almost
very strong.
I don't want to exaggerate it, but I think due to what we're going through now, the spiritual awareness that we all need to have is so heightened and so obviously important that you can't really escape it. Right. So, I guess my question is, how does the spiritual impact our grieving process? How does it make it any easier to grieve better? Does it make it harder? Because if you go, oh God, why did you do this to me? Why did you do this to us? You know what I mean? You can have a million questions going through your head. So
yeah,
how would you advise, or how would you support someone spiritually and emotionally as a priest?
That's a great question. Really great question. And I think in some ways, our society right now, maybe because religion, and not even just religion, but other cultural rituals don't play such an important role anymore. Our culture has a kind of unhealthy relationship with death, I think.
Yes.
I mean, I don't know how it's been in Italy, Filippo, or other parts of the continent, but in this country, it's exposed the isolation of nursing homes and care homes. And
same.
Okay, yeah. Family members haven't been able to even visit their loved ones in the
correct
nursing home. Yeah.
Correct.
So that means that people now are dying without anyone in their family even seeing them going through that.
Just by phone calls or just video conferences.
Exactly.
That's it. That's very bad.
Yeah. So dying now almost is something abstract for us. And we hear all the time about infection rates and death rates, and unless you've actually held the hand of somebody who's really dying,
absolutely,
you don't really know what that means.
No.
And I think that spiritually, that can make the dying seem bigger or more scary than it needs to be, potentially.
Oh yeah, also more meaningful.
Yeah, that's right. And I think if you actually live through something with someone, even if it's something like passing over from life to death, having the fact of being there will help you to integrate that experience into your life better than if you didn't see it and if you weren't there. It's a bit like denial, actually, in a sense, isn't it? You're in denial about the reality of the experience. But then religion can be an enemy as well as a friend in that situation. If you tell yourself a magical story, that can be a form of denial too.
Yeah.
Or you can say, if God loved me, then this person wouldn't die. If God loved this person, etc., etc. You can play all these kinds of games, which are basically forms of magic. But I think where religion can really have a role is in terms of helping you to sit with the not knowing, with the unexplained, with the painful and with the mysterious. Because if you're not jumping to an answer, if you're saying, I want to be honest about this experience, feel this experience in all of its messy complexity, and still somehow hold faith or hold hope, then religion can be your friend. So when we stop playing games and bargaining and pretending, and start saying, well, what is really happening here, and trying to sit with that without jumping to the conclusion, that's what faith looks like. Faith is that attitude of patient waiting without knowing the answer. If that makes some
no, it does. It does. Filippo, what do you think?
No, I like the way it's been told about spirituality and religion, that they are not linked to good or bad deeds, you know, because they are not correct. They are not connected. So I agree on this point, because some people needs to find their way, and maybe they lost their way, like myself. I'm not a believer as I were in the past, but this not means that I'm not able to distinguish what is bad and what is good.
Of course. Yeah, of course.
So it's just the way I think about the spiritual part of side,
Yes.
But I really appreciate the people like both of you, I guess, that you have the faith on your side. I really appreciate it. I wish I could have the same as you.
Philip, I always tell you that you probably know a lot more than you think you do, right? So I feel like Joel said, right? It's about having the right attitude towards the spiritual and the religious. It's not really about using magic words and trying to decipher something that isn't there. It's almost, for me, it's about saying what it actually is, like being objective enough and patient and calm enough to go, okay, I know I don't know everything. I don't know the answers. God is mysterious. God is almost arbitrary in a sense, but it doesn't necessarily mean that it's null and void. So it's almost like a lifelong journey of patience, like Joe Riley said. And I was going to crack a joke because Filippo, you say you're not quite a believer, but you're up in the Alps. Almost like you're trying to go to heaven or something,
I just
right?
have some critical. I just developed some critical thinking more than a religion. Before it was called I used to call it a religion. Now I call it critical thinking.
Okay.
Call it what you want. I mean, Joe, yesterday I called Filippo and he was up in the Alps and he was showing me around, pointing to the hills. I was like, is he trying to go to heaven? Like, what's going on? You're trying to, you know what I mean? And at each summit, there was a cross, right? There's a crucifix.
Yeah,
that's very symbolic.
Exactly.
So I think you're more in tune than you realize. And we will be right back. We have a website called Words Like the Cold. This platform has been tailored to serve writers, book lovers, and entrepreneurs. You'll find my poems, which I post on Mondays to Fridays, and sometimes during the weekends, along with articles on different topics, ranging from art and design to business and finance. Follow Words Like the Cold on Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter. Don't forget to subscribe to our podcast on YouTube, Apple Podcasts, and Anchor. Thanks.
At their best, what faith and what critical thinking share in common is a desire to be to be true, to be honest.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, absolutely.
Faith is dangerous, it's toxic when it becomes dishonest.
Yes. Yes.
And so sometimes the acknowledging that things aren't as simple and easy as you want them to be is like the first step.
Absolutely.
Whether you're a person of faith or not a person of faith is irrelevant at that point.
I think that's a critical point, actually. I listened to a psychologist called Jordan Peterson. Uh-huh. He actually helped me. Well, his lectures helped me kind of realign myself with my faith. And I think the highlight for me is the fact that he doesn't give you easy answers, right? It's almost like, how do you get your life in order? But first of all, you need to stop doing the things that you know you shouldn't do. And no one wants to hear that. No one wants to hear that you shouldn't, I don't know. We all have destructive tendencies, right? Mm-hmm. And no one is perfect, but I think when you realize that in order to attain something good or to maybe get the best out of a situation, you need to work really, really hard, and no one's going to give it to you. And even then, it may not actually work out, which is says, and that makes me laugh. It's like nothing's guaranteed, nothing is certain, but your best bet is really to give your best shot. Be honest, like you said, Joel. Like, don't be dishonest. Be as truthful as you possibly can. That's what faith is. It's about truth in the face of everything else.
Truth gets a bad name though sometimes when we use it as a stick to hit other people with.
Oh yeah.
So it's more about honesty with yourself, I think.
Interesting.
Yeah, absolutely.
Rather than telling other people what the truth is, because then you get into difficulties.
Yeah. So you have to employ wisdom then.
Sure, and listening and openness and all those other qualities that are important too.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah, excellent. So I wanted to choose a poem that reflected something of hope, not grief, because the intuition is to go, oh, we're going to talk about grief, so let's read something about grief. I was like, no, we're not going to do that because that'll be entirely depressing. So Joe, what we normally do is I read the poem out.
Okay.
And we just try to figure it out, really.
Okay.
Since you're the guest, I have to ask you whether you want to read the poem for us or not. And you can say no.
I'm happy to give it a go.
Yeah. Go ahead.
And if I don't do a good job, you can always tell me to reread it, and you can choose which recording you want.
No. We just laugh. No. We just laugh.
Thanks. You let me make a fool of myself, basically.
No. You're good.
It's a nice short one, actually, so that's okay.
Exactly.
Shall I go ahead and read it?
Yeah, go ahead. Yeah.
So it's called A Center. A Center by Ha Jin. You must hold your quiet center, where you do what only you can do. If others call you a maniac or a fool, just let them wag their tongues. If some praise your perseverance, don't be too happy about it. Only solitude is a lasting friend. You must hold your distant center. Don't move even if earth and heaven quake. If others think you are insignificant, that's because you haven't held on long enough. As long as you stay put year after year, eventually you will find a world beginning to revolve around you.
By Ha Jin. Fantastic. And you did not make
good
yourself
one
at all.
Great one.
I love the way you read that, actually, because you kind of highlighted all the, like, your voice kind of like went like
way better than me and Tola.
Oh, thank you.
Way better.
Available every week, guys. If you need poems reading.
Absolutely.
The official speaker.
Exactly. Filippo just isolated me right there. Say he's much better than you. Like, we don't need you, Tola, anymore. Exactly. So I'll ask Filippo first. Filippo, what do you think, man?
Oh, it's a nice poem, very meaningful, because everyone has his own center, and it's not equal to any other people's one, for sure. And the way it's written, it's absolutely creative, because it makes you think more than you read, you know.
Mm-hmm.
I agree with that. Actually.
I mean,
What stood out for you? Like which line?
you must hold your quiet center. Even at the beginning, your mind will go wild. Let's say about thinking what he's saying. You know? Yeah.
Okay, Joel, what's your first impression?
Okay, so first of all, I never came across this poet before. I had to look him up.
I was going to ask actually. Yeah.
So that was interesting to come across this very distinctive voice. And then I read the poem, and I didn't like it at first.
Oh, wow. Okay.
My first impression was, this is too much about the ego. This is too much about,
interesting.
Especially the second verse, where it talks about eventually you will find a world beginning to revolve around you.
I felt that exactly. Yeah.
So I went on a little bit of a journey then, thinking about this poem, because actually there's a deeper sense, and it goes back to something I think that Filippo was just saying, that actually by being true to yourself and by finding the unique thing that you can contribute to the world, you actually become of service to the world.
Yeah.
And so then it stops being about me, about the ego, and starts being about other people again. But it took me a little bit of thinking to get down that line, kind of thing.
Yeah. To be honest, I felt...
Tola.
Sorry, go ahead, Joe.
Was it you who chose the poem?
I did, yeah. Just before I actually give my thoughts, you said you've researched Ha Jin. Who's Ha Jin?
I had to look.
No, I know you know something, Joel. Go on.
Only I know that he's a Chinese American poet.
Chinese American. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Cool.
He was born in the 50s.
Interesting.
I don't know at what point he moved from China to America, if that's what happened, or if he was born. I don't know anything about that. But I noticed that there's something a little bit Buddhist about the poem.
It sounds like it was written 5,000 years ago. That's not, you know what I mean?
Yeah, sure, exactly. It's written in the style of almost like a kind of koan or Buddhist proverb, where it's like first one thing, it's all about the quiet center, the internal, the small, and then it's the distant center, and it's about the world and the large, and both of these things are being held together.
Yeah. Okay. I think for me, similar to Joel. Well, I liked it when I first read it, so maybe that's the difference. But I didn't understand it fully. Especially the last part, especially the last, I would say, 4 lines. It goes, if others think you're insignificant, that's because you haven't held on long enough. I wasn't sure what that meant. I'm still trying to figure that out. As long as you stay put year after year, eventually you'll find a world beginning to revolve around you. I think that's almost a cultural, probably has cultural significance or a religious significance in Buddhism, maybe, or philosophical significance, because that's not the sort of ideology I align myself with in terms of the world revolving around you. That sounds very, like you said, that's very, like almost, I don't say self-centered, but it becomes about you in that sense. So I didn't get it. I didn't dislike it, but I didn't get it. But I knew there was probably a deeper meaning there that needs to be uncovered, which is why we do this.
Yeah.
I loved the part about if others call you a maniac or a fool, just let them wag their tongues. I mean, look, I think in reality, right? I think, like you guys said, we're all different. We all have, our centers are our centers, and we perceive the world uniquely. And people are not going to like you. You know, there are going to be people who just look at you and they're like, what's wrong with you? Like, who do you think you are? That sort of thing. And there'll be people who will see and go, okay, yeah, you're calm. So that's why it says, if some praise your perseverance, don't feel too happy about it, because even that can be a trap as well. You know, so I liked it. It has that 5,000 year feel to it. You know, so it was. Yes, when he said he was Chinese American in the 50s, I was like, that was a little surprising, actually. But
it also sounds a bit like the Baz Luhrmann sunscreen song.
The what?
Oh.
Is that
yeah.
Especially where it says, "Don't feel too happy about it. Only solitude is a lasting friend." The tone is similar. Do you know that it was I mean, maybe I'm showing my age here a little bit too much, Tola.
No, go ahead.
But that was a big hit around the turn of the millennium.
What's the film called?
Song.
I know the director, but I don't know the film.
It's not a film. It's a song. It was like a viral hit. Right.
Filippo, do you know it?
Yeah.
Yeah, you guys are old, man. You know. What can I say?
I would say it's popular culture, but maybe not anymore. It's just a guy. It's like a speech from a graduation ceremony from 1999. Set to music, basically. And then there were many covers and dance remixes and all that kind of thing.
Which part of the poem was that?
I'm sorry?
Which part of the poem are you referring to?
Oh, yes, sorry, exactly. The lines where it says, "Don't feel too happy about it. Only solitude is a lasting friend." The tone of voice there is reminiscent. He says something like, you know, if you're successful, don't be too proud of yourself. All of your choices are half chance anyway. And if your life is a failure, don't blame yourself too much for the same reason, kind of thing. But it goes back to what our conversation before was along this idea of the individual and their integrity, their honesty. And it's almost like saying the more you're true to yourself, first of all, the more alone you'll be.
Yes.
But then,
for sure,
the more you'll begin to find a circle where you belong. And so you can read a world beginning to revolve around you, not meaning like I'm the center of the universe and everything should serve my needs. But more like, oh, I belong to a circle and I'm at the heart of it now. And that can be a family, that can be a community, that can be, or whatever, a network, whatever it needs to be for you.
Yeah, be faithful to your center also.
Yeah, and then you find your place.
Yeah.
I like that interpretation, because, like you said, it's not about being self-centered. It's about finding your own space, right? Ultimately, and there's this idea that each of us are the center of the universe, right? Which is a complicated idea. It doesn't necessarily mean that you are the center in terms of everyone should bow down to you. In that sense.
Yeah, of course.
Right. Exactly. But it's like everyone matters. Right. That's why even people who commit heinous crimes have to go through the due process of the law. So it's like you are innocent until proven guilty, because there's something divine about you,
right,
as everyone else, regardless of what you've done. Right. So I do like that interpretation. In terms of moving forward through grief, how important is it to? It's probably a silly question, but how important is it to center yourself And to center yourself on what exactly? Like how do you even go about doing that? Because I guess time is the ultimate healer.
Yeah.
But how do you even go about finding that center?
Mm-hmm.
Especially during a period like this. When, like you said, when being alone can also be a negating factor.
Yes, absolutely. Well, we were talking about faith earlier on. I think that first line of the poem, you must hold your quiet center. Holding is linked to this idea of waiting, patience, keeping faith, even when you don't know the outcome. It's like sitting firmly in the present, in the reality of your experience. So I think you must hold your quiet center, whether your quiet center for you is critical thinking, prayer, writing a journal, writing another poem, whatever it will be, painting something. Right. You must hold it. I mean, you must find your still place where you can sit in the middle of whatever is going on around you. And I think that word solitude at the end of the first verse is also really important. Solitude is loneliness experienced as a gift.
Yeah, no isolation.
And isolation or loneliness are a aloneness experienced as a kind of pain or suffering. So again, it's about attitude. It's about how you choose to experience your aloneness.
Interesting.
So
it's important to develop some, isolation or solitude. Absolutely.
Yeah. Yep. And many people can put a positive spin on the word solitude. It doesn't have to mean the pain of aloneness.
It's not negative.
Exactly.
It's a negative assumption. Absolutely not.
So I think that those two things, holding and solitude, can be steps to some kind of resolution or healing, if you want to use that kind of language. And also finding a world that you belong, finding a world beginning to revolve around you, can mean change, can mean drastic changes to your way of life. But when you've found that world, then you begin to flourish. You begin to grow into the person who you can be.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
That's a really important point because I think I was reflecting on the nature of reality, which sounds like a very geeky thing to do. But
you have plenty of time these days, so it's allowed.
Oh yeah, exactly. It's almost like if you're not doing that, what are you doing, right?
Yeah.
maybe watching Netflix or something. But like it's rife with trouble. It's like there's trouble everywhere. But it's almost to use God as the terminology here. I think it's about growth ultimately. I think no matter how hard your situation is, I think if you're able to persevere through the highs, through the lows, through the really, really low points, then you kind of come out the other side, stronger, definitely. That's the whole point, coming out the other side, because you're now refined, you're stronger, you're maybe a little wiser. And I think that's what's missing in, I guess, today's society, because no one really talks about that kind of stuff. People talk about, community, but it seems kind of hollow. You know what I mean? Which is why I said,
people are seeking for praises also.
Yeah, to be seen.
It's all about that.
Yeah.
And quick fixes as well. Because I think once you experience something like grief, like you said, if you've never experienced that sort of thing, you hear the stats, but it's never really affected you personally. You're kind of isolated from it. When it impacts you, then you realize that you have to begin a journey that could take, you don't know where it could take a long time. So that, it's a lot to think about. And like you said, it's overwhelming times, to put it simply.
Yeah.
But ultimately, there's a growth process to this, I think.
Filippo, will you allow me to talk about religion for a little bit longer?
No, we can speak for days or weeks about religion.
Because Tola, you've talked a little bit about what in religious language now I would call endurance.
Interesting.
Like going through a process and being transformed by the process.
Right.
Another thing that this poem reminded me of, if we're going to use religious language just for a second, is vocation.
Mm-hmm.
Vocation is the idea that every individual human being has a unique gift, has a unique perspective, or has a unique contribution to make in the world.
Sure.
And definitely when it says, if others think you are insignificant, that's because you haven't held on long enough.
What does that mean?
For me, that means it's really easy to go with the flow. It's really, life is less stressful if you just nod and say yes to whatever anyone else is saying and you just agree with them. But then you're not really being true to yourself. And if you hold on long enough, that means that you resist the flow of everyone else's opinions and perspectives long enough to find your own voice, or long enough to find your own perspective. And only when you've done that will you be actually worth listening to. Interesting.
So it's almost like people respect you for your endurance. Am I right in saying that?
Yeah, or your point of view. You know, it takes one person to look up and say, "Hang on, guys, what are we doing here?" For everyone else to realize, "Oh yeah, we were just on autopilot."
Interesting.
Yeah, you also earn the respect of the people, even if they are on the other side of the coin in terms of thinking. But you earn respect if you have a position.
True,
and you can fight for that position. So you don't get praises, but you get respect, which is more important.
Yeah, respect, absolutely. But again, it's also, which is why I like this poem actually, because it goes. Sorry,
it's okay.
Okay, I think which is why I like this poem a lot, because it goes, even though you earn the respect, it's like, okay, fair enough, but your solitude is your only lasting friend, right? Because those such people who the world is a flip-floppy place, right? It's a sort of place where, you know, they love you one minute, they hate you the next. You know, it's just where it is. Ultimately, you have to be content with yourself. You have to be honest with yourself. You need to be truthful to yourself. You can't lie to yourself. Fundamentally, you can lie to everyone else. You can't lie to yourself, right? So you need to figure out who you are, and you need to be within your center, basically. So, yeah, that's fascinating. That's fascinating. Yeah.
Sorry.
No, go on.
Oh, I think there's something about cultural perspectives going on here. When I was reading about the Chinese heritage of the poet, it made me think about something that Ai Weiwei once said.
Yeah,
he was interviewed in the paper a couple of years ago, and they said, "What's your favorite word?" And he said, "My favorite word is I." And I think if you come from a society where individual freedoms and the freedom to voice your opinion have been repressed or stifled, then learning to say I is really important. But I think in a Western or a European context, where we say I all the time.
Yeah, even in our sleep, right?
Yeah, then for us, learning to say we is really important.
Yeah, I agree with that.
In the corporate environment, it's always we. But as a rule, you know, it's not coming from the inner.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So corporates. The corporate environment is very. What's the word they use? It's not democratic. It's
Yeah,
when
it's
you have
just
flat
we
structure.
because you have to say, not just because you believe.
It's weak because it sounds good, but you're right. You're right. It's not coming from within.
Yeah,
right?
There's no soul in that we.
Yeah, but then if you become the person who holds fast, like in the words of the poem, then you become a whistleblower, or you lose your job or something.
Absolutely. Yeah, you're the odd one out. You're the oddball.
Yeah.
Fascinating. I think culture does matter, and especially when you look at places where, let's say, certain ideologies kind of reign supreme, like in Saudi Arabia, for instance, women have limited rights. Of course, being able to say I is probably not even permitted for a woman. It's like you've got to say maybe you, Your Majesty. You have to say stuff like that, right?
Right.
You know what I mean? So so that's okay. So that's why I looked at this poem, and initially I didn't understand like the bottom half because it seemed not in line with Western norms, supposedly. But that's a great type of poetry. Like if you're able to read between the lines and kind of just go deep,
Absolutely.
then you kind of see what the meaning is.
Yeah.
Which is so. Which is why I also brought Joel Love, because I know he's quite a bright guy. I'll say this though. I saw him during Christmas, Filippo, and he had lights in his bed. Like he put Christmas lights in his bed. So that made me question his. so that made me question his intelligence a little bit.
Just let them wag their tongues.
You got to keep doing it. I think he's going to probably put it in his hand next year just to piss everyone off. But yeah,
I confirm, guys. I really like this poem, as I told at the beginning. So just to stick with the perseverance speech of the poem,
Yeah.
I like this poem because it makes you think of what you don't want to be. That's why I like.
Of the kind of person you want to be.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What I don't want to be. What kind of person I don't want to be. By reading this poem, I understand clearly this fact.
So you're saying that okay, so it's almost
I don't want to praise the other people, basically, in my life. I just want to stick with my own values, which is doing good to the other people, just doing good in the passions and the hobbies I have. Just be a good friend or whatever. Yeah. But
yeah, the simple things matter. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Also, if
I actually saw something.
Also in diversity, I can be. How can I say? Let's say a criminal. This criminal can gain and earn my respect if he is showing me something. Even a criminal, you can deal with a criminal and respect that kind of person. Not all, obviously.
I get what you
mean. If there are some values behind, a story maybe, behind, you can understand that this criminal has a story behind and it can change his attitude. So that's it. Yeah.
They have something to say.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's. I was thinking about that the other day actually. That nothing is as it seems. So, like I said, a criminal, we go, oh, that's a bad person. But when you look behind the curtain, it's like, okay, there's something there, Which is, and that was an experience I had when I worked in the courts last year. The guy who trained me, very, very good guy, like very decent guy, very wise. He was like, you know what, Tola, like when you deal with the defendants that come to the court, you got to treat them with dignity because that's how you would want to be treated, regardless of what they've done. Like you're not supposed to judge them. You're not supposed to criticize them. Just do your job and respect them. Right? Treat them with dignity, and let the law be the law. Right? It's almost like let God be God. Yeah, it's not your job just because you're not perfect yourself, right? So, yeah, fantastic.
The line about if others call you a maniac or a fool reminds me of some of the characters in Shakespeare who play fools, and how sometimes it's the fool who really sees what's going on and is able to say the truth about the situation.
Absolutely. That's very
Everyone else is busy flattering or denying or pretending, and the fool just says, no, that's a load of crap.
Yeah. I actually came across something similar the other day that said the fool almost becomes the master in something like that. Almost like the fool really knows what's going on while everyone else is pretending, right? So right. I do like that. Yeah. I want to be touching something briefly, actually, just before we end this call, because it's going on a bit. Mental health.
Yeah.
How are you doing with that? Because you said that you were struggling a little bit. How are you doing with that?
Yeah. So, I mean, poetry is really helpful. Imagination. I've been doing a little bit of creative writing.
Nice.
I mean, I keep a journal anyway, but I've been writing a lot more in my journal than normal. And doing some imaginative writing, which kind of engages. It allows me to travel. You must hold your distant center, like the poem says. Travel in my mind, even if I'm not traveling in my body. And then also friends, just conversation. It's so important.
Good. Well, I'm glad we'll be able to see you because, like I said, we haven't seen you for a while. Even though you can't see us, which is a little rude, to be honest.
Like, you guys have been high.
I know. I think we're too comfortable. But no. Thank you so much for being on the podcast.
Pleasure.
Thank you, Joel.
Yeah, it's been a really interesting conversation. So thank you for that.
Yeah.
Thank you for your insights, basically.
Exactly. Yeah. It went. I mean, it didn't exceed my expectations because I knew it was going to go really, really well. But yeah, I do appreciate you being on the podcast and sharing your insights. And thank you so much.
No problem. And this is
how have you enjoyed it?
Yeah, I have. Absolutely. When I heard the name of your podcast, I thought this is genius. Oh,
that's
hi.
Cool.
Really? Can you see me, guys?
Yes, I can. Nice to see you.
I can see you. Yeah.
Brilliant. So yeah, I wish you well with the project. It's a really great idea.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, it's really appreciated. And continue to do what you're doing because I think your work is really important. I think society needs the spiritual, it needs the intelligence, it needs the morality, it needs all that stuff. You know, you can't be void of one, or
each other.
We're toast, basically.
Yeah. Awesome.
So yeah, Filippo, any last words
from me?
Sorry.
Sorry.
Any last words, Filippo, before we end the call?
My last word?
Yeah.
Oh, see you guys in London.
Fantastic.
Great.
All right, guys.
I look forward to hearing this conversation when you've edited it.
Yeah. It's going to be out on Monday.
Cool.
So I'll send it to you.
Cool. Have a great weekend then in the meantime.
You too.
Yeah, you too. Free. Ciao.
Cheers, guys. Bye.
Bye.
Bye.